Hey, how's it going? It's Steve Walter here, and what I wanted to do today was to talk about chromatic aberration. So in this shot, I used a Canon 85mm 1.8 lens, which is for all intents and purposes a nice lens, especially when you shoot it wide open. I think, what was I shooting this at? I was at 2.5, f2.5. But you can see what it does is it really blows out the background very nicely. However, the trade-off with this lens is that it has quite a bit of chromatic aberration. And what is that? That translates to color ghosting. So if we zoom in here, specifically I'm taking a look at her glasses and her hair over here. So over here you can see there is purple and green, and over here there's lots of purple. So for the most part, Lightroom is pretty good at cleaning this stuff up, but in this case, it doesn't do a very good job, and I want to show you. So if I come over here to my lens corrections in the Develop module, I can go to the profile and say Enable Profile Corrections, and what this will do, let me zoom back out. This is going to analyze the lens. It knows it's the Canon 85, and you can see it cleaned up the vignetting around there, although I didn't really mind it, but it's okay to clean it up. But if I come over to color, let me zoom back in here. Underneath color, I have the option to check a box that says remove chromatic aberration. Awesome. Well, after checking it and waiting a moment for it to render, you can see it didn't really do much. It hasn't done a pretty good job here. For some other lenses, some other images, it cleans it up nicely. So in this case, what I have to do is actually go in and remove it by dragging these sliders. Or you could use this eyedropper tool. If you click and bring it over a certain area, you can see if I put that right in the middle and click, you can see it automatically slides over and adjusts the threshold. So it's done a pretty good job of actually cleaning that up here. I still need to work on this green area over here. So what I can do is start to drag this slider over a little bit, and what you can do is if you crank the slider way over, what it's trying to do is look for the green to remove it. Now, it hasn't done it here. I'm going to pull it back to maybe 3 or 4. What I really need to do is start to adjust the green hue. And let me drag this a little bit more over to the yellows. And maybe a little bit more to the yellows. There we go. Now I can see the hair is cleaned up pretty nicely. So if I turn this off, just by clicking on this switch, that'll turn off all lens corrections. If I turn that off, and you can see it renders, and then I turn it back on, and then it renders. And it cleans up the chromatic aberration pretty nicely. Now, what can happen, because ultimately what I'm doing is I'm telling this lens corrections, what that's doing is it's just working with color in the image, in a very specific area, but it's just working with color. What you can see, or maybe you don't see it obviously, but there are trade-offs. So while I did clean up the hair and I did clean up the glasses, notice here, right along the edge of her finger, see how it's gray? That's happening because of this, and you can see there's chromatic aberration between that. And usually chromatic aberration happens between contrasting areas, bright and dark areas. You can see there is this purple around here. So, like I said, ultimately it's a trade-off of what do you want this chromatic aberration applied to, this chromatic aberration lens correction, what do you want that applied to and what don't you want it applied to. So what I want to do is show you just a way that you could have sort of the best of both worlds. It takes a little bit of time, but you could do it. So I'm actually going to, I'll leave this as is, and I'm going to tell it to open in Photoshop, specifically as a smart object, and I'll tell you why in a second. So when Photoshop opens this, basically what it's going to do is it's going to take all the changes that we just made in Lightroom, carry them over, and set it up as a smart object here in Photoshop. So you can see that all of those same issues that we see are still present. Now, the trick, or really the way to get around that to have the best of both, is to duplicate this. And what I want to do is choose New Smart Object via Copy. The reason I want to do that versus just dragging this down here, it looks like I've duplicated it, but what I've done is I've duplicated the exact same smart object, and I don't want that. I want to have another smart object that I have the ability to make changes to. New Smart Object via Copy. So now here is this Smart Object via Copy. I'm going to double click on this little icon, which will open the image up in Camera Raw. here I can go back to my lens corrections. And basically what I want to do is turn off all of those settings that we had applied. So uncheck, remove chromatic aberrations, pull this back, pull this back. So now all of my chromatic aberration is back. If I say OK, what I can do is now start to pick and choose where do I want that to be applied. So if I turn off this layer, you can see there's the fix and here's the color. So if I wanted to, for example, paint back in some of that chromatic aberration, like here on her hands, I don't mind it so much in between her fingers here and right over here. So what I can do is, if I hold Option and click on the layer mask, that applies a black mask. And if I grab a brush tool with maybe say a light opacity or a light flow of about 20%, I can start to paint back in some of that color. Because Lightroom doesn't know, or I should say, Photoshop and Lightroom don't know that I don't want it to take away color from here, so I just have to add it back in. But what I can do is have it keep it off of, for example, the glasses. Now, part of the trick of this is finding all the areas where it's affecting it, where you don't want it to be affecting it. But for the most part, I think it was really just up there. There's some here on the shirt as well. So this is just kind of a quick way, or quicker way, of being able to fine-tune the exact chromatic aberration that you want. Or that you don't want, I should say. So it can definitely be helpful with certain presets and lenses over here on the jaw, but then for others, not so helpful. So this is an image that I like, and I want to spend some time on it, so that's why it's worth it to me to do this. But now you can see here, I've removed it from the glasses, and most of the hair, there's still a little bit down here, but I'm okay with that. And then now I can continue working on my image in Photoshop or bring it back to Lightroom and process it. But now I have selectively removed the chromatic aberration areas, but without affecting the entire image. So I hope that was helpful. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me or anyone through the Project Shutter team. I am at Steve Walter Photo on Instagram. Project Shutter is at Project Shutter CT. Feel free to join the Facebook group for Project Shutter. We'll be there, we're active. Any questions you have, put them up there. Otherwise, keep watching these videos, and I hope they help. Thanks.